Look at that! It's the missing panel about Tyr. Odin must have stolen it. But why?
So one of the Norse gods that is mentioned throughout God of War, that we only really see through paintings and murals on a wall, is Tyr. In today's video we'll be discussing how Tyr's depictions in God of War compare and contrast to those of actual Norse mythology. As always with these videos, there will most likely be spoilers, so if you haven't played the game yet or you just don't want the story spoiled, please click away now. In the game, Tyr is seen as perhaps the most loved and respected deity of all of the Norse pantheon. Despite being a god of war, Tyr was still seen as being fair and just, and it seemed as if he spent most of his time travelling to different realms, making peace and learning of different cultures. The vast knowledge that Tyr was able to obtain and share from his travels meant that he was seen as a natural born leader, being trusted by all of the races of the 9 realms, even including the Jotnar, who despite being fierce enemies of the Aesir, still saw Tyr as an ally. The contrast between Tyr and his father Odin is very clear for all to see. Where Odin became obsessed with the giants, attempting to almost erase them from existence, Tyr took it upon himself to stop his father and his brothers from entering Jotunheim. It was this final act of betrayal that led Odin to eventually kill his son, but there are still many remnants and temples scattered throughout the game devoted to Tyr. Most of what we see in God of War regarding Tyr in terms of the role he played and his actions have been slightly changed and embellished to suit the storyline, but Tyr being a fair, just and respected deity is definitely something that was taken directly from Norse mythology. In Norse mythology, Tyr was seen as one of several deities associated with war, but he was also responsible for maintaining law and justice. Although Tyr does feature in Norse mythology, many believe that he may have originated from a much older Germanic god named TYR'S, who assumed the role of chief deity. That is until he was replaced in terms of popularity and authority by Odin and Thor, who would both share his role as gods of war. The identity of Tyr's father is something that has been questioned over the years. In God of War and quite commonly in Norse mythology, Tyr is one of the many sons of Odin, but there are some sources that claim his father was instead Hymir, the giant best known for accompanying Thor when they were able to fish the wild serpent from the bottom of the ocean. The identity of Tyr's mother is generally unknown, as she's never referred to by name, so even though he is regarded as quite a popular deity, there is still much about Tyr that is shrouded in mystery. Despite having quite a large role in Norse mythology, Tyr rarely features in any stories. The most well-known tale that Tyr appears in is the binding of Fenrir. When the wolf Fenrir was born, the gods feared that because of how quickly he grew, he would pose a threat to them all. In order for Odin and the rest of the gods to control Fenrir, he was raised amongst the Aesir in Asgard. But even as a young pup, the only god who dared to approach and feed him was Tyr. Eventually it was decided that Fenrir would have to be bound to contain him, and the gods had a variety of chains and ropes crafted to hold Fenrir. When Fenrir became suspicious, the gods told him that they were merely testing his strength, applauding him every time he was able to break free from his bindings. Sending word to the Dwarven realms, they were able to craft a magical ribbon that was extremely flexible, but could never be broken, regardless of how hard one struggled. When the gods presented Fenrir with this ribbon, the wolf began to suspect trickery and refused to be bound unless one of the gods placed their hand in his jaw as a pledge of good faith. None of the gods were willing to step forward and volunteer, as it would mean certainly losing a hand. The only one brave enough to step forward was indeed the just and fearless Tyr, who without hesitation placed his hand in Fenrir's jaws, and as he expected, when Fenrir was unable to break free of the ribbon, he chomped down and swallowed Tyr's hand. This story does a fairly good job in highlighting the selflessness and bravery of Tyr. Where all of the other gods were unwilling to lose a hand, Tyr, knowing that binding Fenrir would guarantee the safety of his people, was willing to sacrifice his hand for the greater good. For the most part, Tyr's depiction in God of War remains fairly true to that of Norse and Germanic folklore, and Tyr is definitely a god that I would have loved to have seen appear in just more than paintings, but let me know what you guys think. Is Tyr a god that you had previously heard of? Do you think Tyr may not be dead at all and we may see him in a future game? Let me know in the comments below.